The time has come for my people to go.
I'm not a queen, I'm a servant of the people. I'm not a king, I'm a servant of the people. It's what the people demand, we gonna keep fighting till we get that land. I'm not a queen, I'm a servant of the people. I'm not a king, I'm a servant of the people. It's time to rise, to get what we want, we got to organize.
Welcome to the Pantsula Podcast, presented by the All African People's Revolutionary Party as part of the Kaji Work Study Circle. My name is Evan, and it's my comrade Winfred. We're here to discuss the difference between reading and studying, and how, when you're doing organizing work, that it's important to study and not just read. Whenever we have these Pantsula podcasts, we always honor the ancestors that came before us. And for this episode, we're honoring Marsha P. Johnson and Muhumusa. Marsha P. Johnson, since this month is Pride Month in the United States. I'm not sure of the pronouns, but some places use she, some places use they. So, whichever one, you can always correct us. She was part of the Stonewall riot, Stonewall Rebellion against the police in New York City, Occupy the Not-Behoking, where I am. So, and also was in an organization called STAR, against STAR with Sylvia Rivera. So it wasn't just a matter of her being part of the Stonewall, but also organizing LGBTQ youth and keeping them protected and organizing revolutionary work. And Muhumusa, who is a African spirit guide who fought again, who led people in what was now Rwanda, Uganda, against British, German, and Belgian colonialism. And as we say, we always want to make sure that not only do we honor ancestors that Africans know and know the further depths of their collective work, but also those who may not get heard about as much. So what we want to talk about. So here, my comrade Winfred, just want to pose something. So we talk about reading versus studying. So what exactly is the difference between reading and studying?
So at least there's a number of differences. So I guess reading in itself would just be taking a text, looking through it or skimming through it, and just taking in the information that it's providing. Studying would be really just a more in-depth analysis of the text, and using dialectics in order to have a solid understanding of the text itself and its overall context. So this would involve reading the text with other people, having dialectics about, okay, what does this mean? How can this be applied to our own lives or our own organizing struggles? And what is the intentions of the author? What could be their motivations for writing it? What could be their goals? And then how does that play into how we understand the text and value it?
And definitely. And I think another point, and it applies for both, not only for organized work, but generally, because I know quite a bit about the difference. I know when I'm taking classes, so sometimes you feel, or I think anyone who's taking classes or anything like that, you might read through something okay, I got 30 pages I have to read for tomorrow or for next week. So I just read through it. But yeah, you maybe remember 2 or 3 things. That is, can you really call that studying? No, you have to. And sometimes I have to tell this myself. So don't act like oh yeah, like you people don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to study. It's like we're trying to improve ourselves as well. So, but one thing is to understand. Okay, I'm reading this. Like, where have I seen this before? How does it relate to something else? Is this in a conversation with another book that someone else read, or is this talking about something that they're doing? Is this more of a practical work, saying, okay, we have to do this, this, and this when we're doing our organizing work, or is it more a philosophical piece? Is it both? So yeah, and another point is reading tends to be like an individual activity, and since one of the aspects of the A-APRP is a collective work, is that we have to do this and collectively, not only within our work study sessions, but also when we're out with the masses, or we're out with brother sister organizations, with allied organizations, so we know where they're coming from, and then they understand where we're coming from. So
yeah, so basically like reading something with the masses for the purpose of not only understanding it as like a mass collective, but also applying it as a mass collective, as opposed to just trying to get through the book.
yeah, and another thing I want to touch upon with this, does this only apply to, say, like with the A-APRP, we have a reading list of books that do work study of works from Nkrumah, Sekou, Toure, Amilcar, Cabral, Garvey, Du Bois, so on and so forth, as well as works from sisters and those of marginalized genders, Asad Shakur, Misa, Yuridang, Winnie Mandela, so on. So would this only apply to stuff we're reading, or would this apply to anything that we read? Like if I'm reading, say, the New York Times, or if I'm reading Newsweek, or if I'm reading Black Agenda Report, would that also apply there?
Oh yeah, of course. Because like for everything, there's like always a goal or motivation or like limitations that the author can have. So like let's say I'm reading an article. Like there could be a really like a deadline of a certain amount of words that the article could like be forced to have. Like even from a basic, I'm writing an article. So they won't be able to include everything of like the whole like history behind or like the entire context. So like being able to have that conversation about the text with other people who may know more information, or be able to like link towards like other resources or other connections that are vital, is like it's key.
Oh, definitely, because I know we do this a fair bit when we're discussing outside of work study. We share articles, we share videos, we share music, and I think, and what's good about that is that you don't want to just stay stuck with stuff that we're reading in our work study. This might be some other things that from, say, organizations that we're interested in working with. This might have some, there might be some contradictions or something that I want to talk about beforehand, or it might be something where people are trying to like get a better grasp of the line. So we say, oh, like they worked with this way, so maybe apply this. So I think that's a key point there.
Yeah.
And going further along on the point of on having this study go beyond just like what a party or organization comes up with. Would this also apply to, say, I know we had a podcast episode about liberated zones, contested zones, enemy zones, and as well as episode on how everything is political. So with this, in that point, would this also apply to, say, enemy sources? Let's say, since we're for the establishment of Pan-Africanism, so the total liberation of Africa under scientific socialism, which is something I forgot to add in the beginning, but we always go back and do that. So would this also apply to say, I need to read about what the Oppenheimers have to say about Africans who are trying to reclaim the land in Azania, occupied Azania, so-called South Africa, or what the president or administration of the United States or some militia people or some like my militia people, or European militia people have to say. Would that also apply in that case?
Oh yeah, of course. Really, like any information that you receive, like learning with other people and like understanding it and analyzing it is key. So like even with, I guess, yeah, even with people who are like actively opposed to Pan-Africanism, like hearing about like what they're trying to do or the arguments that they're making can like warn you of like what they're gonna try to do now. So like a lot of the arguments that like we've seen against Pan-Africanism today, you can probably find it in like articles or like really like stuff from like Frederick Douglass's autobiography. Well, not that he was against Pan-Africanism, but like the kinds of arguments that people are making. And so if we're able to see like what are the things that people are saying and then analyze like has going down that conversation or path ever been useful to us, we can understand, okay, is this useful for us to go on it now? Or like sometimes the enemy would like literally just write out their tactics out in the open.
Yes.
If we aren't reading it, then we're missing out on key information.
And you can see this. I don't know if anyone saw this. Obviously, one of the big things that's a major discussion within the capitalist media here in the United States is about the January 6th. What do you want to call it? Riot, rebellion, what?
Reunion.
Yeah, yeah. Some like two separate parts of the settler empire. The one part wants a little more of the cake than the other part, but it still is like a settler empire as an operation. If you saw the discussion between Representative Matt Gaetz and I forget what his title is, Mark Milley, I believe. There was a discussion about this the very ridiculous reactionary point about critical race theory, which we could go on about right wing. They do this a lot. They'll even the person who sort of started the conversation about it. The whole point is that it's like anything they've done. It's like political correctness, like woke or use of woke in a pejorative manner, or cancel culture, or anything like that. That they use certain words in a way that either use irony or use some kind of twist in it, so that they can deflect, saying, you don't know what that means, or you can say, see, you don't know what it means. Like they use these rhetorical tricks to just get it so that people can discuss it, like we just did right now. But yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. Like they'll use really any language that they think that'll work to advance their own ideas. So like even the idea of like equality was divisive at one point. Yeah. And it still is divisive at this point. So like any word, any term that like people create, even if it isn't useful, or like even if it's like extremely useful, like they'll go against it if it goes against their own personal interests.
Right. And you even see it, like I also talk about the use of woke in a pejorative manner. Like they talk about, like you hear about like woke capitalism, that's something that left radical revolutionaries talk about all the time. There's been a long discussion about the recuperative the recuperative property of capitalism to take anything. Like it's a long time, like in radical circles, to understand that they'll take people who are either figures or organizations or topics that either leaders or masses have discussed and use that to sell product or to use it against us. So this sort of a interesting trick that they use. And obviously, I think the big example is the logo of Che Guevara for the heretical photo, because the photographer of that photo didn't put any intellectual property rights on that photo, which is why it spread so widely. But people see that people wear it, and then obviously you get some of the gusanos who are just say, "Oh, he was a ghetto, he was racist, he was hated this," or they see someone who wears it just because, "Oh, he looks so cool," or like people like they have no kind of like socialist like revolutionary socialist leanings of any kind, but the photo looks like quite iconic anyway. So, and they think that's somehow a spread of communism, even though that's just the recuperative property of capitalism. And you see like how many parodies of that picture. So, yeah. But to go back to capitalism, that oh no, I think I lost what I wanted to say, but yeah, that there's a decline of it, and they use it as if to act as if they're somehow the protector of working people, which if you see who the extractive industries that are providing the money, the certain aspects of the tech industry giving the money, and just the general reactionary religious aspects of it or stuff like that. That it's not a problem with capital. They just have a problem with any kind of reminder that there's certain aspects of the status quo that are kind of messed up, and even if capital will use it to just try to justify its existence and say, you want to work with us, you don't want to boycott us, we love black, we think Black Lives Matter, we think we want to stop Asian hate, we want love is love, or we think women we want to support Me Too or something they're talking out there, where, so
because their whole point is to maintain either power or dominance in whatever field or industry they're in. So if they think if they think that going a certain way is going to maintain their power or grow it, they'll take that way. If in a few years they realize that it's certain marketing or sales or donations or whatever, they'll somehow discover the truth and then do a complete 180. But at least those ideals aren't really what they have in mind is maintaining their power and dominance.
Exactly. And I think another point is what you've seen with Juneteenth, that it's been used to justify, I think, look at how far Africans have come. Look at how far they come. Now we have the day off, even though you're still relying on your land and labor and intelligence to keep this thing going. Look at how we recognized it, right? We're good. We're good, right? Right. But
it's like a gentrified neighborhood with a George Floyd poster.
Yeah, and let me just try to get back to Miley. Is that we have this discussion of what enemies talk about. Not only do you have the so-called recuperative property of capitalism. Also, like even like the militaries, like he mentions that I read Karl Marx, I read Lenin, I read Mao Zedong. Like they read stuff from the revolutionaries because they know that like they see how like even if a lot of it is watered down, they see how much Africans and other colonized people and like class and race traders or so on, or gender traders have a problem with what's going on right now with the temporary nature of labor, with the fear of violence from the state and vigilante and settler vigilantes, with the worries about their health, about like so much. So they know that okay, if something does indeed happen, even though we have a massive propaganda apparatus and so on to keep in line, if somehow the masses say are able to organize and rebel themselves, then we have to study what those people have been, what they're reading. So it's important to do that. So
yeah.
And let's see. And it goes. Another thing is that so it ties into to what we discussed on self-criticism, positive criticism. That another part of the study process is that you have to know that okay, there might be something you don't understand, and that's perfectly fine. Like there's some stuff. Even I've been doing work study for almost 2 years with this party, and been doing some kind of organizing work for a couple of years before then. There's still a lot I don't know. So, and even some senior comrades and the cadre and so on, there's a lot they know that I don't know, but even then, like the best of them recognize that no matter what they're reading or no matter how many groups or people there have been around, there's always something to like, always some way to say, okay, have I been doing this correctly? Have I been, and if I haven't been doing it correctly, what do I do? And that's another part of studying and it's just like studying what you're doing for what that press you call they schools that way of studying there, you have to make sure, okay, if I did a test with 10 problems and I got 2 of them incorrect, what did I do wrong? Like, was it a matter of a faulty process, or was it just a matter of just not knowing what it was? So you always have to keep on looking back.
Yeah. And I don't think you have to understand something completely like the first time you go through it, but like just take note of it and like make sure that you can go back to it. Even if like you can like either ask other people or like just like go out and try to experience things. So if let's say I'm reading a book about organizing, like there might be something that I don't understand about the assumptions. Talk to elders, talk to like your peers, to try to get an understanding of what's going on, and then also try to do the work yourself and see like, is this working for me? Like, what could be the reasons why it's working? What could be the reasons why like I don't understand some stuff, and then continue on that process on itself. Like you need a combination of both work and studying.
Exactly. And I think the issue, and I think as we talk about the issue of asking others, is that I think we've been prepped to have this thing where if we don't see that grade, like if we don't get that 100, we don't get that A, we don't get that star, right? And then okay, what's the point? And as a result, once we're outside of that school environment, we think, oh, do we like, and we use this stuff then it can be difficult to sort of adjust to that process where it's okay to make mistakes. Like making mistakes, like we wouldn't like people wouldn't be where they were if they didn't make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And as you talk about with earlier books, like if you saw our episode with our comrade Ahjamu and his book, and if you haven't gotten that book, do so. Like get that book right now. And one thing is key is that he doesn't just want you to read the book and say, oh, this is cool. He did some work and maybe nice, but wants you to take the book and actually apply it. And that's where the study comes. Like studying involves what's called the praxis, the linking of, okay, we need to organize people around this issue, or we need to do this, and then okay, what have other people who've done something similar have done? So you read up on what they're doing, and then you do it, and you see where things went well, where things didn't go as well. And then you say, okay, when they had trouble, what did they do? And you see, excuse me, and then you see, and then you apply that to the conditions you have, because obviously material conditions are going to be different. Like no matter how great a book of organizing is, the conditions are just going to be somewhat different. And you have to recognize it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you say if, let's say, hey, yeah, there's like, all this talk about work, about studying and work is great, but let's say I'm with people who, because of the conditions that they're in, that of colonized people, that their literacy might not be as good, or they might be disabled, or they're younger people, or they're older people, or there might be something where they might not be the revolutionary intelligentsia of some sort. They're doing more temporary work, or they're sexual labor, or they're doing they're taking care of children, or domestic work, or some other service work or something. Like what do you do? Like what do you do there at that point?
I mean, I'd say that like the objective is working towards the liberation of African people, and putting power over Africans, of the African masses, directly in the hands of the African masses. So if you're helping keep Africans alive, if you're supporting Africans as they just like go about their day, then you're working to keep Africans, you're working towards that process. I think like time can be like very expensive in the sense that a lot of us don't have a lot of it. So in that sense, just like, yeah, it really just depends on how much time you really have. But like, I would say like work with the people that you work with in other senses, in terms of like questioning, okay, like why is this happening? Like, is this like helpful towards African people, or is it a form of exploitation? And what can we do about it?
Yeah, and I think another thing we want to point out is, I think you see it especially in the writings of Amilcar Cabral, that one part is I think it's a two-part. I think our key one is you have to take care of like what you actually need. That if you're just gonna go up your block and you're just like, oh, excuse me, do you want to talk about dialectical materialism with me? I mean, it probably won't go well. But if you say, hey, I've seen these pigs, like they keep on harassing y'all. You want to do something, or you see like your neighbors, they're they're having issues with like these with some like corporate landlords. Like they keep bothering them with the rent, even though they're supposed to, there's supposed to be a moratorium on it. Like, like we want to do something about that. Like, if they get one, you have to take care of like, what they need in mind, and then you bring about, okay, the police are doing this to protect property, or the landlords doing it because they want to extract us, and since, or if you saw their work with with Palestine. Oh, we're blocking this. You see this out on the west coast of the Snakes. Workers who are refusing to take in material because it comes from Israel.
Yeah.
Or you see this in Italy too. You see this in Tanzania, or if you see mutual aid products, like, hey, we need to eat, we need to get some clothes and so on, and that's where you build, because you have to take care of their needs, and even if they never read or never done any sort of like organizing work that you would consider something you consider organizing work, they might know some stuff that you don't know. So, and I think a big part of that, like, as we talk about with criticism, self-criticism, is to have humility. I think being humble in this is critical, because if you think you know, like as we said, if you think you know everything, you're not going to do a darn thing except lead a cult. And we're calling for the masses of the people to take control of the land and the labor and the communication of and unify Africa. We're not talking about cults here. So when we're listening to so it's all about listening to each other. And there's a group here in El Barrio, East Harlem, called a Movement for Justice in El Barrio, and who take some of their principles from the Zapatista movement. And one key that they have is that you spend a lot more time listening. So you're listening to what we're talking about the mass of people. Key thing is to listen to what they're doing. You could study all these great like rad people, but if you try to just force it on the people and say, hey, they said this, let's do it. But obviously between the time between when stuff was written and where they wrote it and so on, a lot of things are different. So you have to know. So you have to see, okay, they want this, even if it's not the perfect revolutionary thing to do. You still gotta say, listen, and then have both that humility. Another part is patience. That humility and patience to learn from them. There's some sort of contradictions that they may have where they learn from you, and that allows that sort of collective work, that egalitarian work, that humanist work to come together. I think.
I guess something to add to that is that a lot of the theories in and of itself were made as responses or questions about the material conditions of their environment. So like if you look at Marx, his theories were based off of the environment that he was analyzing, particularly I think like in around the area of industrial Europe. And so his politics were like based from that. And so if you like, there are always like things that you can apply to other contexts and like different material conditions, but like you need to understand that the basis of like what you're talking about within the community has to be based on the material conditions of that community. So like listening is just really just trying to find out like what are the material conditions, like uh, what do people need, what have people already been organizing for, like what is the structure of what's going on there already, instead of assuming that like this context that I've like never been to before is exactly the same as like something that I read about in a book.
Right. And if anyone has like any issues or trouble understanding what we're talking about, material conditions, what we're discussing is like the ability for people to eat, to live, to have shelter, to like, keep themselves occupied, to relate to each other. So if you're is somewhere where where let's say there's like an urban environment where there's like plenty of food, but a lot of food's coming from elsewhere. And as we saw during all the COVID-related shutdowns and lockdowns, that the logistics of transporting food and clothing and other material got significantly impacted by it. So
yeah,
and you just think, and you think about in a general point. What do you do when, and that sort of point you could bring up with people saying, hey, think about when it got locked down for a few months, it found more difficult to get food, or when you did get food, it was more expensive, or you try to get some toiletries and you had to walk in, you had to be in a 2-block line. So you, and it relates to something I reread in Asada. It's on his autobiography about, and you see a lot about, what, like when you see like rebellions against or uprisings against police or vigilante violence, that one thing you often hear is they're burning their town down. How awful is this? How awful it is. But then you realize that the building you're in, you don't own that, or like, unless you paid off the mortgage. And like if you're in a house or some other, you're paying a financial, you're paying a bank or some other financial institution, or you're paying some other person, or if you're in an apartment, you're paying some landlord, whether it's a person, people, or some corporation. And unless you have, even if you're on a farm, like you might have to rely on some tools from, elsewhere that are built elsewhere. You might have to get seeds from something like from Monsanto or Bayer, or it keeps you keep thinking about it. Well, there's a lot of stuff where, it's like if you're in these imperialist nations, like some of this might be good, but in the end, there's not a lot I can control, and then depending on where you are, especially in the snakes, it's a lot more individualistic. Some places where there is some kind of collective like ethos, but even in those cases, there's still some wait, what do I actually have control of? Especially if you're a colonized person. Again, that's where you can lead those conversations. And when you're out feeding the people, you're doing a survival program, you're out organizing with tenants for doing some kind of solidarity network, right? Or if you're trying to unionize or trying to do some anti-work thing, those are things to remember. And I know we talked a lot about with regards to studying that and reading. I know we briefly mentioned that it doesn't have to be a book, or it doesn't have to be an article or something else. Like, where else can this sort of study, this sort of like reading versus study dichotomy lead where else can we see this like reading versus studying dichotomy?
One big thing could be like just listening. So listening to members of your community, listening to elders, like looking at interviews. So like Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, a bunch of other people. Like they have a bunch of interviews that are just like straight on YouTube. You don't have to read it. You can just like pop in your earphones or headphones and then listen. And so, yeah, really any source of information, like news, like just like, I guess like gossip among your friends that at least, at least about like society in general, not about the person who stole your wallet. But yeah, really, and like anywhere that you're like getting information and like listening and communicating with people, like you can do that form of study.
And I think even if you're somewhere where, like, let's say you don't have the where the dominance is in, say, or whether it's a peasant community or mining community or some other place, as opposed to where we're a lot more reliant on, say, on service and quote unquote intelligence or that sort of that like the tertiary economy, like that applies there as well, because because of how connected the world is as a result of the like decades of capitalism's expansion, of imperialism, and of the capitalist patriarchy, that even our internal conversations have some impact with what's happening abroad. We've been discussing with regards to Maria Mises' book of Patriarchy, Accumulation on a World Scale, that some analysis of the division of labor within the world doesn't take into account that women and women identifying folks and marginalized people with marginalized genders have such a critical role of with development children and peasant work and housewife work or other domestic work, so on, that capitalism relies a lot on that, and sort of ignoring that is another place of where study is important, because if you just think if it's a matter of you got to go to the factory, like it's still factories, of course. So if that's where you are and it's an important part of the struggle, then go on and do it. But again, you still have to remember that that the struggle takes place is all over. Like you said, everything is political. Like every part is political. So if there are those dynamics, those like collective dynamics within your family that have issues, then that's where you have to study, and that's where you have to study. And it's not just a matter of, I got to read this book in order to understand. Like it might help, or you have to, but it's always helping talking to everyone. Like you have, even if, and it still applies for more of a oral rather than a written culture, that knowing these stories and knowing who to get these stories from is critical.
Exactly. Yeah, and even in the case that when you're talking to people and they say something wonky, that can really, that sometimes that can happen, but it's important to remember that they still have they can still have important insights to offer. So don't just just really look at what they're saying and then try to analyze it and say is this useful to the material conditions, or is this not useful, as opposed to this person isn't well, this person said this one thing, so like I'll never listen to them again. Well, unless they're a white supremacist, but or the of the like.
Yeah, because if someone wants to deal with de-radicalizing those white supremacist settlers, like go ahead and do that. But like for us, and as we said before, we'll work with the Europeans who do want to do have legitimate struggle either against their own colonial battles, like the Irish against English imperialism, EU imperialism, U.S. imperialism, or say the Basque against Spanish and French imperialism, or anyone in the nations who want to reject want to do actually rejection of the settler dynamic rather than just doing a land a sort of a land declaration like they did in the Oscars, like oh yeah, you're on occupied land, you're gonna give it back, you're gonna do anything else, you're gonna be there when and land and water protectors are trying to get their land back or keep themselves or you can actually do something about it, and that's just yeah. Well, on that point, yeah, and I think and that studying is what it goes back to. It's constant, because if you're reading a book, if I say if I'm reading a book and you got 20 pages in, I don't like that book, boom, I can just I'm done with it. So and there's nothing wrong if there's a book you don't want to read. I'm just talking general reading.
But, go to the next book.
Yeah. As far as studying, studying involves there might be something where there is some discomfort, whether it's from and for you talking about something that someone was saying is they have an analysis that's either outdated or wrong or somewhat flawed, and then you study because some people might agree with it, some people might disagree, and then the studying comes from understanding, okay, where are our differences in that? So I think that's a big thing, but it's always something constant, and of course, so and even if you're studying, you still have to. Like if you're studying in day schools, there are times where okay, I have to take a little break, and it's the same thing, because if you're studying all the time, then you don't have the chance to take that break. And people, and no matter how serious a revolution is, they need breaks. So it's okay to take a break from studying, but again. It's in general, it's still something that is very consistent.
Yeah, and all of this is key.
Mm-hmm. Have there been any in your work? Have been any examples where there was a conflict between someone who was simply just going in and reading versus and not really doing that actual study? And were there ways, and what ways were you able to resolve that? If there haven't, then that's fine. But what sort of experiences you had in trying to bridge that gap with people?
Yeah, I think for the most part, most of what I've done has been more service oriented as opposed to reading oriented. So I don't think I've ever had that experience.
Okay.
At least of conflict within reading something or study.
Gotcha. Trying to think. Do you think there have been times where there have been issues where some of us we're working or we're in school or doing both or taking care of family, where say, oh, I have been able to read this, and I think one aspect that's been helpful is to say, okay, like if you have any issues with the book, like you're always open to contacting me and say, oh, there's this topic that there's this issue of this part that I'm confused about. Like what is he, she, what they mean? And I say, okay, oh, we're going about this. I share something and this, or and another point that we talked about in the party is that it's helpful to always break things down. And if someone knows me, that I have trouble breaking things down at times. But I think that's another part of a study that you're able to, like we're talking about the consistency of study and breaking down bits of work is particularly helpful, because if you try to read like 60 pages at one time, or you try to talk to everyone within a 4-hour span, or try to do some project over like quickly, then that can be overwhelming, and you don't really have a chance to say back up and say, oh, what am I doing? Where am I going wrong? Whereas if it's broken down in little chunks, you say, okay, I have these 5 or 10 pages. I read this, and then I read back again. Because that second, third time all through, there might be something you catch, and even better, if you're reading with someone else, I think there's something. I actually think there's something we could implement ourselves. Like say on a day, like you say, okay, let's read this section. Let's read this section of the book, and you talk about it for a little bit, for like 20 minutes, saying, this reminds me of when we're doing this project with this group, or when we like, we had issues. We had issues on some points, and then say, then they resolved it this way. Maybe we work it out like this. And I think that's another point of study where you take those little chunks, and they can lead to longer sessions and make discussion, the actual work study sessions, even more valuable, and make the work that you do after you do those study sessions even less likely to make a mistake. Or if you do make a mistake, you are able to better recognize the criticisms you need to make and correct them. So.
Yeah, and I think this is key to really understanding any kind of information. Look at it from the grand scale, look at it little by little, or read it not the entire 300 pages in one night, but let's say 5 to 10 pages every day or every week, and then use that combination of overall message and then step-by-step message, combine that and then communicate with others about it into something that you all can understand and use to take action.
Exactly, because I know there were times where, whether it's on the podcast or whether it's in a session with the people elsewhere, that I'll say, oh, this reminds me of this book, or this reminds me of this art, and then you oh, what did they say? Or, oh, which book was it? Or, oh, which one? And again, I think it's been helpful for me to, when I've been able to break it down, to really get a gnaw on it. So it's kind of chewing. That sometimes it's good to. Sometimes you might not have a choice but to take a couple big bites and go. But it's so much better for you, both from a health standpoint and that's from a deeper, spiritual standpoint, to take time to enjoy those bites, to break down the food, or I think that applies to studying.
Yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts or any further thoughts?
No, yeah, I think the biggest point is like seek to understand. Well, like read and listen to understand. Not just to say that you read and listened.
Right. Because I think it can be, especially if we have social media, like we see, like a lot of us, like if we read, there's some books we want, certain radical works or anything we read, we want to show off, and I think that's fun. Like it's fun to show that you have these books, so you're able to read it. At some point, you have to understand sort of the like funneling nature of social media, that there's a certain amount of people who are gonna care. Like if people in your hood or your area, so on, they're struggling, and they don't know who you are, and you don't know who they are, then at some point you're kind of like waving a banner in the air, and there's no one there to see you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And as we talk, and even though we talked about studying, is that studying involves organization. So if you're African who wants to liberate your people and unify and liberate the continent under scientific socialism, then you always go to the website A-APRP-INTL.org. If you want to join or support, you can always leave a message there. You can also listen to other podcasts, the Revolutionary African Women, a podcast from some of my sisters, Animatu and Missouri, our A-APRP in New Mexico, Tiwa Land. They do a podcast African news every Thursday. So our comrade Ahjamu does Ahjamu and Shakura. They do a Sunday evening broadcast. California, there's also the social media team. They have a podcast as well, so you can always check them out. We'll have the links in our description. So thank you again, and so we want to wish everyone a good evening, and join the organization and fight African people. Forward.